Nice to see you. So around here we believe in learning from our mistakes. And so I think the mistake that I made this week personally was assuming that if we had more extremely intelligent, technically capable people involved in setup, that would lead to setup taking less time and going smoother. I just forgot that that's not how the world works. If there's one extremely intelligent, technically capable person involved in setup, then that person will probably do it after a long amount of time. And if there are two extremely intelligent, technically capable people involved in setup, then it will never happen. So I, towards the end, just got involved and started demanding that things happen, somewhat forcefully, so that we could be together. And here we are. So I'm glad we made it. And it's good learning for me. Others are nodding their heads as well in the room here, so it's good learning for everyone. Again, my bad, I just forgot that that's how it works. I had spent some time immediately prior to this sit on a mountainside where things just work. And so I got a little confused, had to remember to remind myself that everything works the opposite of how it should, even when you keep that in mind in this world of technology. But I've learned from my mistake, and here we are. So, we've had some practice already. That's been very good. It's been nice to sit with you. Let's just take a little bit more time to practice. I would appreciate practicing, and maybe others would as well, now that the audio issues are debugged and there's maybe less confusing sound happening, at least in this part of experience. Don't try to fix it anymore, it's already working. Try to fix it somewhere, you might break it. Bring your attention once again to this body and breath. Once again, exploring this posture, seated, standing, or perhaps walking, or however your body is currently configured. Lying down also is okay. Feel this breath feeling the rise and fall of your abdomen with each in and out breath. Allowing all experience to come and go. Each breath, we attend to it. Each breath, we connect with our surroundings through this process of attending to the breath. Bring our attention to the breath and lay it on the breath. And our attention naturally is pulled from the breath towards various experiences. This process, this dance, this sometimes maybe fight, is the way that this experience moves, the way that we move through this experience. As we experience this breath, we get to experience the whole world. Find out what it's like when we want something to happen and try to make that happen with the breath or with our experience. Perhaps find out what happens when we give up on that. Stop trying to make anything happen. All we know for sure is that eventually we won't be able to make what we want happen. So we have this time to explore that. Naturally, there may be a lot of energy towards making things happen. And so that may play out. We also get to see what happens when we give up on that. Nice to see you all. Glad that I can see you. It's astonishing, a miracle. Unbelievable, given my experience. And I can see pictures of you right now on the screen. So nice to see you. Thanks for taking time out to sit here. Know that we are all really busy, and I'm very grateful that we have this little group that can take time to do what really matters. We're so busy so much of the time, and yet we here are willing to prioritize this experience for at least a little while, once a week, and possibly longer than that. For a little while, once a week, the people here prioritize having this experience. We are sitting here together and having various experiences, and at this time anyway, the priority isn't trying to get the right experience. The priority is just having this experience. This group, this community values that. And I value this community for valuing that. So we had a nice, I think it was nice. I apologize. I'm sorry that it took so long and was so confusing getting set up today. I'm sorry that you all had to wait so long and that there were, I suppose, confusing and jarring sounds for some time. So sorry about that. And also, we'll try to do better in the future. And also, well, it's kind of nice in that it's a nice reflection of the world that we have set up. Nice little microcosm of this human world. This world based on a certain kind of mind. A nice little reflection of that. It's a nice little self-contained, small, not inconsequential, but relatively low stakes. I don't know how to say it, microcosm of the whole thing. I know that in my own life, this really past month, the time since I've been out of solo retreat, and certainly the past couple of weeks have been in many ways challenging. I imagine that may be true for some of you also, as this world situation has continued to unfold or unfurl or fall apart, as the case may be. For me, I spent a lot of time fighting with various circumstances and being confused about why everything is so challenging. It's like I'm sitting and people are unhappy. Everyone wants me to be different or wants circumstances to be different, and they're complaining about that to me in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable, and then I want them to be different. And so I complain to them about how their complaining is so annoying, and they complain about how their complaining is actually perfect and I need to accept it. so on and so forth. And I'm just getting so confused. I'm like, why is everything so difficult? Why is this all so hard? I don't understand. Why is it so challenging to do this right now? Why are things so challenging right now? And well, right before the sit, I decided to walk up Sandruna Mountain, which is right next to this house, the place that we've been very generously given to use to bring this teaching into the world. Walked up the mountain, and in, I mean, after maybe 10 minutes, 10, 20 minutes, it was just like, oh yeah, I forgot. It's, that was also challenging because the human mind is completely insane. That's why. The mind that is running the world is completely delusional. And we are doing work in the world of that mind. And so things are hard. It's challenging. That's why. That's why it's challenging. Challenging because we are bodhisattvas who have decided to move into that world to do work in that world. And it's like we have a sense so often that our experience is wrong somehow. That things are hard, my life is challenging, and that's a problem that I need to solve by changing myself, or maybe changing some small part of my life in some way. Maybe I need to get rid of a relationship or start a relationship or get rid of a job or start a job or make some other small change. And in fact, it's very helpful just to notice that it's hard. Really helpful just to notice that it's hard, that it's challenging, that it is suffering, so that when grace intervenes in our life, when we have the opportunity to find a different way, we can notice that that's a different way. I'm walking up on Sandruna Mountain, and it's just beauty, love, happiness. Everything's the right way around. Every experience is connection and healing. Walking up the mountain, and crows are calling, and their caws are perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. The caws are exactly at the right time and exactly the right manifestation of the personality of the crow. Walk along and come to a little grove, come into the grove, and there's a big tree, and the tree is perfect, exactly as it is. And there's a hawk in the tree, and the hawk flies out and cries, and all of that is beautiful, astonishing, magnificent. And it's as though I'm reminded again of how fortunate we are, how lucky we are to be on this planet, to be in this world, to be able to spend time with trees, birds, animals. That exists right now. That's possible right now. We can do that right now. We may not be able to do that for all that much longer. The rate at which this insane human mind is eradicating life on the planet is accelerating. And it doesn't look like we have more than a few decades at the current rate unless something drastically changes at a large scale. But we have this right now. We can go out into nature right now. Nature can heal us right now. That exists. That's possible. We can go out into the woods, and then we can come into something like this where multiple extremely kind, intelligent, compassionate, wise people spent an hour trying to get the AV setup going for the sit, and it didn't work for no reason. And they had it all set up, it was perfect on a certain computer, and then that computer just froze. It just froze. It just froze right as the sit started. That just happens sometimes. Computers just freeze. And so everyone's scrambling around, and we have to spend 5, 10, 20 minutes getting everything debugged so that we can see little pictures of each other on a screen. You can come into all of that and just appreciate it for what it is. It's clear, obvious demonstration of the world condition. There's this connection, this love, and a bunch of deep confusion. I have a sense that that is part of why so often the Buddha taught a lot of different people. The Buddha taught lay people, taught renunciates, people who had given up the household life and given up all their possessions and gone wandering. This kind of a person who is a cross between our modern day homeless person and our modern day philosopher or rationalist, something that doesn't really exist so much in the modern world, but that at that time in ancient India existed quite a lot, and who knows, may exist again. We'll see what happens. This exalted, humble practitioner striving for clarity and goodness, giving up their own possessions and being taken care of by a broader culture. The Buddha also taught kings. He taught people who, at that time in ancient India, had not quite as good of a situation, not quite as, maybe you could say pleasant, not quite as majestic, not quite as opulent of an existence as the average middle-class American does today, but pretty close. You know, if you consider a king of a country 2,500 years ago, they have an enormous palace. They have people, expert musicians, the best in the land, who will play songs for them whenever they like. They have the best food in the world at that time. So not as good as the Indian food that you can go out and buy today, but pretty good Indian food. Now, I think Forall, if I recall correctly, said that at that time in India, they didn't have potatoes or tomatoes yet. So, you know, they had really good Indian food for the time, but not as good as our Indian food. You just imagine these kings, these people who had all of the best things that the world could provide and had set up their environment in just the way that they wanted, with everything positioned just so. Huge palace, validation from every perspective. Everywhere you look, you get to see smiling faces, people saying, "You're so great. That thing that you just wrote, that was wonderful. People really liked it." Not quite as good as the modern world, where we have Facebook, which just finds whoever agrees most with us and amplifies their agreement as much as possible. Not quite that validating, not quite that satisfying, but pretty satisfying. You know, it's hard, it's a small country, there aren't that many people on the planet, but you amass the ones who are most inclined to agree with you in one place, and that's almost as good as Facebook. Almost as satisfying as opening up Facebook and seeing that like count on your screen. So the Buddha taught such people. People who were not quite as lost, captured, beholden to, enslaved by sense desire as the average middle-class American today, but pretty captivated, pretty lost, pretty enslaved by sensual desire for that time, among the most enslaved in the world at that time. The Buddha taught such people. And it's very interesting that the Buddha brought those people into places called things like Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. Very interesting. The Buddha could have gone anywhere. He could have gone into various palaces, but instead of that, he just stayed in the forest, sat under trees. Maybe there were little buildings built, but the buildings were still, I imagine, quite open to nature, very minimal, and perhaps not minimal, but quite sparse compared with a giant stone palace. And kings would have to go to see the Buddha. They would actually leave their palace and venture into nature in order to see the Buddha. This is, in my view anyway, highly significant. In leaving that palace, that place that we've set up to give us just what we want when we want it, entering the natural world, already, even before reaching the Buddha, nature itself has a chance to communicate with us. That relationship with nature has a chance to unfold. And then, even as these people, these kings would spend time with the Buddha, still they're spending time with nature, with trees, with plants, with sunlight, perhaps with water. In the sense that it's really important at this time in history, especially, that we look closely at that. That we consider our relationship with nature. And we really go and spend time in nature. First of all, because it's a contrast to the way that we have been going, the way that things have been set up. Second of all, because it's healing. It actually is healing. May not immediately feel healing. It may feel boring or unpleasant or painful or jarring. We may not be able to easily see the way that it's healing from our current perspective, but it actually is healing. And then third, because seeing that, we begin to get a sense of what is possible. We get a sense of what's possible in the world, of in a certain way, you might say, how many resources we have available to use, although it isn't quite about that. It's more like how much joy there is in each moment, how much love, how much connection there is in each moment, how much possibility for collaboration, for co-creation with both human and non-human beings is possible. And have that sense, we get to discover that, we get to realize how incredible things are. This is really important to see, because I have a sense that a lot of the time when people hear talks about uh, the way in which the world is going in the wrong direction, they have a sense that people giving those talks are just crazy. You think there's very little joy. There's so little joy. There's so little happiness. There's so little fun. There's so little love in the world. And it's so hard to get. Yes, you have to spend a long time setting up the Zoom call, and then it doesn't quite work. It takes a long time debugging it, and then you're there and you're sort of connected, but you're so far away from each other, you can't feel each other. You can't touch each other, but you can hear and see each other, and that's so precious. You have a sense that people who are giving these sort of talks are saying, you have to get rid of all that. You have to lose the connection. You have to lose the love. You have to lose the relationships, the joy. I have this sense that, uh, you know, people giving this talk are saying that we have to abandon all the good things that we've created in the modern world. And in my experience, anyway, it just isn't like that. It's we, this mind is trying so hard to get connection by pushing away every form of connection, and then trying to grab onto the little bits of what it used to be connection that it can find, that it can understand. That's the way that we've set things up. That's the mind that's in charge of the world. That's the mind that is running the Bay Area. It's the mind that's been running the development of technology for a long time, at least the last few hundred years and maybe longer. And what people like me are in the position of saying is that isn't the right way. I mean, I'm sorry, but that just isn't that's not the way. If you want this thing, you want connection, you want love, you want happiness, you want beauty, you want co-creation, you want collaboration, whatever it is that you want, that is not the way that you get that. Trying to make the world be the way that you want it to be is not the way that you get that. It just isn't the way that you get that. It seems like the way that you get that because that is running the world. And so uh, you're starved for it unless you participate in this process, in which case you get not quite enough of it in order to be happy. But that just isn't the right way. It's just not the right way to get that. It's not the way to get that. It doesn't work. We've been trying it for a long time, and it continues to not work. So we now have a chance to consider another attempt by Sāriputta to explain the right way, to explain the way to do this. So for those who may just be joining in, we've been for a little while examining an exchange between Sāriputta, who is the Buddha's chief disciple in ancient India, and Anathapindika, who is the Buddha's chief male patron, a person among men who most supported the Buddha with things like places to train, resources to advance the training and the teaching. And unlike in the case of the various kings who went to visit the Buddha in Jeta's grove, Sāriputra has actually gone to Anathapindika's house. Why is that? Because Anathapindika is sick. He's suffering. He's gravely ill. He's at the end of his life. And so it wouldn't be feasible, for one, for Anathapindika to make a journey to see the Buddha, and for another, this is not someone who is confused in the way that the kings at that time are confused. Anathapindika is already clear to a certain extent. He's seen the right way to a certain extent. And so he doesn't need that. Of course, it would be good if he could do that, but he's not in good health. So he can't, and he doesn't need that at this time. He doesn't need that particular demonstration. And so Sāriputra has gone to his home to offer a teaching. Not to compare myself to Sāriputra by any means, not even kind of, but here I am in your homes. So we're in a certain way sick. We're sick with panic, fear, anxiety, and also the world is currently dealing with a bit of sickness. And so we're all home out of a combination of compassion, concern for others, and also confusion. So here we are. Nice to be here with you in your home. So Sāriputra has gone through by now a certain teaching saying, Anathapindika, don't cling. Train yourself so that you don't cling to any sensory experience or anything that depends on, that unfolds from, that is causally downstream of that sensory experience. Anything you see, hear, feel, taste, smell, or know, don't depend on any of that. And furthermore, don't depend on the 6 elements. We went through 4 of them last time. The last 2 are space and consciousness. The space element, the consciousness element. Space is just the emptiness that everything is inside of. When asked about consciousness, I believe the Buddha said it cognizes, and so I'm not going to define it any further than that. But those 6 things don't depend on. Train so that your consciousness doesn't depend on those elements. If you want to hear more about that, you can listen, I suppose, to the talks on YouTube if they're uploaded. And now he moves into what is the title of this week's talk, which is the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. So these are, of course, so maybe for those who don't know or haven't studied the text, it's okay. I don't expect any of you to study the text. The 5 skandhas are this thing in classical Buddhism, certain way of categorizing the experiential world and also maybe the world. Open question. So they are material form, feelings, perceptions, samskaras, or variously translated as fabrication, construction, patterns, impulses, as that sense. So this sort of like self-perpetuating feedback loops, constructed, self-reifying patterns, evolutionary patterns, this kind of thing. Samskara kind of has all of those senses, or consciousness. So Sāriputra is saying, train yourself so that you don't cling to form, feelings, perceptions, samskaras, or consciousness. And your consciousness does not depend on form, feeling, perception, samskaras, or consciousness. So this is one of those teachings that is kind of tricky. Hard to really do it justice without spending a lot of time on it. And also, I think hard to do it justice well, on the internet. um, because it's very easy to talk about these 5 skandhas in a certain way, which is that this is a certain Buddhist system of trying to classify the world, and it has these features and it's referring to these things, and that's fine. You can do that. You can put that in a talk on the internet. People will listen to it. Won't really connect with it, or maybe they will. Who knows? But in my way of seeing things, actually, these 5 aggregates are more or less. It's sort of surprising to me, actually. This, at first, they seemed like meaningless, random, sort of a weird way of trying to break up experience. But nowadays, in my way of viewing things, these 5 schools, these are just the 5 pillars of the school of the modern religion, sort of modern doctrine that controls the world, basically comes out into these 5 different things. So the first of these is form, uh, the material world. And to cling to this, to identify with it, is to say something like, form is all there is. The material world is all there is. Matter, what can be measured, what can be tracked, is all that there is. That is clinging to the aggregate of form, the skandha of form, and training so that your consciousness depends on the skandha of form. That you hold the fixed view that the material world, the world of form, is all that there is. There isn't anything beyond it. Which may be familiar to some of us. We may have heard that doctrine somewhere else before. Or feelings. You have these feelings, you have emotional sensations. Maybe some of us have emotional sensations right now. We like this, we don't like that. We want this, we don't want that. This is pleasant, that's unpleasant. We have these feelings. We talked a lot about feelings a little while ago, a few weeks ago. Well, this is just the other end of that same religion. This modern religion that controls the world, this what you might call materialistic humanism, says form, matter, energy is all that there is, and therefore it doesn't really matter what configuration that matter and energy is in. No one's really alive. That's just sort of an accidental configuration of matter due to random circumstance. But wait, I still have all these feelings. And so, you know what? These are actually in charge. These are actually true. These feelings, how I feel about things, that's the most important thing in the world. This then is just the other opposing, contradictory pillar of modern religion, which contradicts itself like any good religion because it's a religion and reality is huge and vast. Hard to, you can't have just one view that meets it. So you have contradictory views, and so modern religion is no exception. At times when you need to slaughter living beings, you just identify with the view that there's no one there, and then you slaughter them. At times when you need to get something that you want, you just identify with the view that my feelings are the most important things in the world, and you get that thing. And you just oscillate back and forth between those opposing contradictory positions, and that's your life. Or you have perception. This is the third of these, this sense that what I see, hear, and feel, that's really what it's about. And it's all just about perception. This is something that's really popular nowadays in the rationalist and sort of transhumanist circles, the sense that we'll just upload ourselves into computers. And as long as you're having the same perceptions, it doesn't matter. It's just the same as being alive and really in the world if you're just having perceptions. Because you are perceptions. You are perception, perception is you. As long as you see, hear, and feel the right things, it's all good. It doesn't matter if any of that's real or not. It doesn't matter if any of that exists or not. It exists just as much if it's a computer simulation as if it's the real thing. Or sanskaras, patterning. There's a sense. We are our patterns. We are a product of evolution. We should engage with that evolution. We should direct it in certain ways, not in other ways. I get very concerned about this, in the sense that maybe we need to have certain races, certain genetic stock be cultivated and held as superior to other races. Yes, this evolutionary thinking, the sense that change and growth is the most important thing in the world. This sense that samskaras are what it's really about, that making the samskaras better is what it's really about, that engaging in this process of self-reifying feedback loops is where it's really at. Or just to complete it, consciousness. Yes, this is the sort of, all four of these are kind of one pillar of the modern religion, and then consciousness is another. You have this sort of hippie religion. You are infinite consciousness. You go to a yoga class, people tell you that. You are consciousness. That's the thing that's really happening, is that there's infinite consciousness, and that is you, and you are it. Consciousness is everything. Train so that you cling to consciousness, and your consciousness depends on consciousness, because that's what's going on here. That's what it's about. So there, that's my talk about the 5 skandhas. Sāriputta is just saying, don't cling to any of that. Train so that your consciousness doesn't depend on any of that. Don't buy in to the belief in any of those 5 things as some sort of ultimate truth, some sort of ground of being, some sort of absolute self, because none of them are. None of them are ultimately trustworthy. None of them are ultimately you. Those 5 aggregates, subject to clinging, are the thing that is eating the world. Those 5 aggregates, those 5 skandhas, subject to clinging, are the thing. Those are the 5 pillars of the giant mimetic machine that is eating the world, that is eating the real world. And so Sāriputra's advice is very simple. Train yourself so that you don't buy in. Train yourself so you don't cling to them. Train yourself so that your consciousness doesn't depend on them. So you don't see them as safety. You don't see them as reliable. You don't see them as you. You don't see them as worth holding on to. Train in that way. And how, practically speaking, do we train in that way? How, practically speaking, can we train in that way? How to do it? Well, I gave one answer at the beginning of the talk. Go spend time in nature. Go outside, find a tree, and just sit down under the tree and connect with nature. And for those of you who are maybe playing the part that I so often played in this movie for a long time and saying, but the laptop is nature. This house is nature. Yes, I know. It's true. It's just words. Go find a tree. Find the part of nature that is a tree and spend some time with that. It's okay. I understand. I've been there. I've seen this movie before. I've played that character in it and many others. It's okay. Not a problem. You are nature. Your laptop is nature. That's true. Absolutely. Not disagreeing with that. Find a tree and sit under it and connect with the tree and the sky and the clouds and the sun and the moon and the soil. Because there is love. There is God. There is honesty. Of course, here too. It's not that love isn't here. It's not that God isn't here. It's not that honesty isn't here. It's just that, practically speaking, if we're going to go about training this, we come to the point of acknowledging with humility that we need to work on it. And so we make things a little easier for ourselves by being in nature, in the part of nature that is trees and skies and such. That's just a little bit easier to do this. Makes it a little easier on ourselves there. Having gone to nature, we can't just stop there, of course. We want to keep going in the same direction. Find something that, as Forel says, is even more natural than nature. Go in that direction, the direction of meaning, of connection, of love, of fulfillment, of honesty. But don't stop at the tree. Sit down under the tree and then keep going in that same direction. We have to set that goal for ourselves, to keep going in that same direction so that we find what is more honest, more meaningful, more natural than that tree. And of course, some of us may be able to do that right now. You may be in a place where it's relatively easy to do that right now. If so, then by all means, great. If you can take your laptop or phone or something with you, be outside, great. If not, we can still go in that direction even from here. So let's spend a little bit of time going in that direction. Sit for maybe 15 minutes or so. If you want to walk around outside, you're welcome to do that. You know, if you want to participate in the discussion, maybe be back in 15 minutes or so. If you want to just sit here and practice, that's good too. Allow this world to fill your body. Experiencing whatever nature there is available right now. At the very least, this physical body, alive, moving. And perhaps anything else you can connect to, any trees or sky, ground. Acknowledging the whole field of experience, but being particularly interested in the part that is alive. Connecting with this living being, you, and any other beings. that you are in relationship with. Can be particularly nice if there is a little bit of contrast. There are both nature sounds and perhaps city sounds. Notice that difference. Nature is quiet, vast, open. The trees don't make sound except when the wind blows through their leaves. That sound is beautiful. The birds are almost silent as they fly through the air, and yet they call out. They sing to you. They sing for you. And we can contrast that with these various large metal machines making various kinds of noises, of sounds, containing, yes, if we think about it or we look closely enough, a living being. See this contrast. Notice this difference. May even notice in our own experience that there are parts of experience that are flowing, dynamic, shifting, open, parts that are stuck, stagnant, tight. Your own body, feeling the various kinds of body sensations. Noticing perhaps the difference between this direct experience of the body right now and any thinking that we have about our body, We may sometimes see a picture of our body in our minds. Notice that that picture and the direct experience of the body are two different things. Notice they may alternate quickly, they may seem to be in different locations. There's thinking about the body, picture of our body, perhaps talk about the body, saying various things about it. It hurts, it's tense, it's relaxed, it's happy, it's sad. On the one hand, and the direct experience of body sensation on the other. Not so much about one of these being bad and the other being good. It isn't really about that. Of course, that can manifest, but if that manifests, simply notice that that is coming and going in terms of thinking. In a sense, bad and good is just one more piece of experience. More way to chop up the world. Maybe that all these sounds, sights, body sensations, and thoughts, through coming and going, are just beautiful. Simply pay close attention, careful attention to what is happening moment after moment. meeting this experience. Allowing the whole thing. As you like, continuing with that meditation practice, or perhaps end or transitioning into discussion mode. We didn't have very long to sit today, but I wanted us to have time to interact. And so you can use this time to practice if that suits your current circumstances. And you're also welcome to bring anything that you have in terms of discussion. Time to connect and be together. See Renee/mom's hand up.
Thanks for all that you all went through doing battle with sand, who's not happy about your comment that you taught it to think. And that's what happened here. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
Um, I I have a few things, and I'm going to try not to talk for 20 minutes. But we did. Dad and I did the Shinzen home practice program
Mm.
earlier today, and it was feel good practice. It was, the whole thing, the deity yoga, see, hear, feel, be good. Um, a couple of things to say about that. One of them, and I wonder what you think about this, one of them is that the tech challenges were in that frame as well as in this frame. And I wonder if maybe sometimes we take these things on ourselves as I'm screwing up somehow, when actually, maybe actually, Sand is just pissed and taking it out on everyone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't, I hope nothing I said implied that there was anyone wrong in any of what was going on. Uh, yeah, it's a good point. You're basically saying, I hear you saying anyway, we tend to, we don't have to uh, assume that it's due to us.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no, I didn't hear you blaming anyone. I heard you apologizing a whole lot for
Oh,
your part in it.
yeah, sure.
So, there's maybe a fine point to be looked at, but um, sometimes I think it's really easy to get into that place of, if only I had remembered that this is how life is, then I could have spared everyone from this suffering.
I
When,
didn't mind. I was just kind of apologizing to be polite.
oh,
Um, yeah, you guys, I mean, you know, I don't quite want to go to the other extreme and say you should suffer. That's not really true, but I liked it. I thought it was a nice way to be together. But yeah, you're right. I think I was quite apologetic, and so as they say in Canada, sorry about that.
and there are the Canadians to vouch for that way of communicating. Hi, Canadians. So then the other thing about that was the connection to nature. For me, that being being at the monastery in Vermont and having the sky at night available in a way that it is not around here, just because of city lights and so on, and that sense of how all of that is us and we are that's available in nature. That was also the that's the thing I bring into this feel good practice when I am doing it, when I am doing the see good. That's what I see. I see that landscape. And it's not the same as getting up and going out and seeing a tree, but it can evoke a lot of the same thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that the goodness and the awe and the joy that, for example, Julian of Norwich speaks of,
Hmm.
that is nature, that is God. Um, I don't get as much of nature as I would like, and I don't get as much of nature as is actually available to me right here, but it's available anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Just through the remembering, the image-based remembering of the connection to nature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it evokes everything that is available there in person. It's
yeah,
the
really.
same.
Yeah, really. Yep. Yeah. Last thing on that is just, let's see if there's another question, but on that is, uh, we've been spending some time talking about Master EQ lately at the monastery. Master EQ is a very unusual character who I won't talk in much detail about for many reasons right now, but he has a great quote, um, which is just talking about this wind blowing through an ink painting of pine trees. You have a painting of pine trees, and the painting shows wind, and you can actually see the wind, even though no one painted the wind. It's painted so that there's wind. And he says, the wind in the ink painting, unpainted, feels cool. So maybe I'll leave that as is and not try to say anything else about it for now. Okay, if we move on and come back if there's more?
Of course.
Great. So Daniel.
How did the five skandhas stick together to each other and end up winning as a group?
Good question. That's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Do you have I don't have an immediate answer ready, but I am curious. I mean, I could consider it. I'm curious if you have a sense, if there's any.
Well, in general, for an idea to win, it needs to be persistent, it needs to be self-transmitting, and it needs to be self-transmitting in a way that preserves the essence of the idea. The persistence is covered by them being hard to stop clinging to. The transmission is and the transmission without mutation, I am at more of a loss for. I guess some of them might be transmissible through conquest, but I don't know how many of them actually transmit this idea through conquest.
Yeah, my one piece to add to that is just, well, it does seem that conquest has been involved in that tradition quite a lot. It's actually kind of interesting to me. I haven't read about this in great detail myself, but others I've talked to seem to say, so Sario, I think, has talked about this in the past, that so Europe kind of took over the world 500 or so years ago. And it's kind of surprising, actually, that Europe took over the world, because 1,000 or more years ago, Europe was an absolute backwater. It was, I mean, there were these massive empires in India, China, other places in the world, the Arab world, Africa, that things were happening. And Europe was this place in the world where people were the most confused, backwards, dirty. Like, people would conquer the world and then they would actually stop at Europe and say, you know, I don't really want to conquer this. It's not really worth conquering. It's just kind of, and so somehow that then took over the entire world. And it seems that part of what was involved in that, there were a lot of different pieces, and anything that anyone could say about this is going to be a summary that leaves out a lot and is hand-wavy to some extent. But part of what was involved in that may have just been that through a lot of hard work and careful experimentation, people found a way of creating a positive feedback loop, mutually co-reinforcing, between unethical behavior, and power. So if you take on the materialistic view that these people's experience doesn't matter because they're just matter, they don't really exist, then you can conquer them and turn them into slaves, which is really hard and painful, but at the end of the day, you then have slaves who actually do increase your ability to conquer, to spread, to take over. But then wait, you need to somehow want to do that. Well, how are you going to do that? I know, identify with feelings and say that you want slaves. And so
then it seems like only the first two skandhas would win out.
Yeah, right. So why the other three? That I'm much more confused about. I'm confused about the whole thing, but I'm more confused, I think, about the last three, why they were so important. Aside from, I mean, you can kind of see in the 20th century the play between the fourth skandha and the first two in World War II. You know, you had kind of an entire civilization based on this view that that humans are the most important thing in the world, and that the way that humans are important is that they evolve, and therefore we should evolve them the right way. And you can kind of see that come to power and then play out. But I don't know. I'm not a historian. I'm just a meditator.
Right. I was thinking that if we understand this, then we have a better understanding in general of traits that cause an idea to win, some of which, if they're either ethically neutral or even, if we're lucky, ethically beneficial, could be co-opted into creating a true, useful, compassionate idea that wins.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, this is huge. And I noticed that Swabhava, who is in the room next to me, is nodding. I don't know if you want to say anything, you don't have to. Kind of put you on the spot like that, but.
Well, I will only say something along the line of urging people at Oak to investigate when we say state of mind. It's basically down to these 5 skandha aggregates. And we're wondering, how can we see the 5 aggregates as it is? Like recognizing which of them is coming up in a moment, such that we can see so clearly that, as you say, we are uniting them together, but not in a delusional way. I think that's the first step towards even understanding how to use that towards power.
Great. Yeah, so see clearly the 5 skandhas in experience, moment after moment. Yeah, great. And then there's a suggestion that doing that will lead in the direction of this question of how powerful, how an idea that's ethical can be powerful. Yeah, great. Yeah, it's good. It's good exploration. I appreciate you bringing it, and I hope that you will keep on looking at that. I like that line of inquiry a lot, personally. So curious to find out what we find out. Very good. Anything else?
I have one thing to add when it comes to the 5 aggregates. As I look into the exploration of how to unite them together, what came for me was non-self. That's about the only way it can be united, that is both powerful and loving and wise.
So non-self meaning
Anatta.
Could you maybe speak a little bit to that?
The framework around neither clinging on to the self nor clinging on to no self, like destroying the self.
Yeah, great. So a sense that there's these two extreme positions that you might take. One of there is self, and the other there is no self. You're saying don't buy in to either of those. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good exploration.
Is someone able to type into the chat what you were talking about that sounded to me like master EQ?
Oh, God. Okay, warning. Content warning. This guy, this is a 14th century Zen master who has more, his poetry is more everything that the beat poets were, the beat generation. He was more of all of that. He was crazy. I mean, he was really, yeah. I believe someone described him saying he is awake. I mean, he's awakened, but his way is crazy. So he writes poems about going back and forth between whorehouse and bar. He's totally crazy. But I have also at the same time found very deep connection with him in many ways. So I suppose maybe you typed his name in.
It's
Great. So it's in the chat. You can look him up if you want. Yeah, if there is a Zen master for 2020 Bay Area, maybe it's, I don't know if it's him or not, but yeah, it's really interesting actually, because like 9 out of 10 lines of his poem are like very profound. It's like just 2-line, hard-hitting, pure dharma. And then the other 10 is like weird, lewd sexual exploration with like prostitutes that it's so weird. So warning, content warning, and I don't know. Maybe enough said about that. People at Oak are gesturing. We've kind of been talking about him on free time a little bit. Good. So, any last thoughts? Otherwise, I think maybe we can move into announcements. Okay, well, nice to see you all. The Oak is going to have a short retreat this coming week, so Monday through Thursday. There's some chance that that retreat will be virtual. If so, it will not be excessively virtual. So it may not be, you may not have the opportunity to join in, but if you are interested in both overcoming whatever hurdles may arise in terms of attending, and you're willing to not attend if we say no, we're not going to do it, then reach out and maybe you can come with, who knows. No guarantees whatsoever, but I hope having hedged and caveated that enough, if you still want to talk about that, then you can talk about it with us and we'll see what happens.
How would you recommend we do that?
No, just email oak@monasticacademy.com or .org. Anything else? I can't think of anything else right now. Okay, well, it's been a real joy to connect with you all. I hope that we stay in touch and look forward to continuing on this big project together. Project of resolving the great matter of birth and death, resolving the largest and smallest issues in the world, and enjoying the great joy of being together, being alive. So please take good care of yourselves and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye from Willow.
Bye-bye.